first elected, there's a book that's given out by the League of Cities that talks about the history of cities and the concept of this public corporation that we're all a part of and the role we play. And one of the things it talks about is the word charter. And not a lot of people realize, why is it called the city charter? Well, it goes back to the King of England. And in London is probably one of the first charters that was issued. It was for businessmen who wanted to build a road. And they were granted a charter with the authority to tax, to provide this public infrastructure for commerce and use. And I think that's really an interesting thing, because what we're talking about today goes back to that history. And the fact that one of our basic fundamental things is this public corporation. When people get together and they create a city, and the public places and things that are laid out for the public good, where you put your roads, water, the sewer, it's such a fundamental piece of what we are about as a city that it behooves us to really pay attention to this and address it. And in this city in particular, and I couldn't think of a reason why we're in the mess we're in right now, other than it's not unique to Lake Worth, it's not unique to Florida or the U.S. There's lots of infrastructure that you hear about, and you ask the question, why? Why did somebody plan for this? Why decide not even to maintain this infrastructure? And there's lots of reasons for that, and all of it can be labeled benign neglect. People don't think about the roads and the infrastructure like they do other things, because you take it for granted. It's there, it's always will be there. And the fact is, it's just not true. That's a false assumption. And also, as cities, our accounting practices, as Mr. Carr will tell you, the Government Accounting Standards Boards have stepped up the way we account for those assets and put them on the book and depreciate them, so we don't get in this mess again. But lo and behold, here we are. So the first point, the reason we're here is, this is a fundamental responsibility that's on our shoulders. And we should have been taking care of it all along, and we did. Secondly, having been here since April, and I've really made a point of trying to make an assessment of the business model of this city. And I say that in terms of, everybody realizes we're in a financial situation, especially in the general fund, that's not good. And everything we've been looking at as staff and in conversations I've had with you, and in your ideas, it's about figuring out how to fix the city so that it is stable, sustainable, and healthy. And the truth of the matter, when you look at the data, there's not enough properties paying taxes that the people living in this city can afford this city. The amenities and all the things that we have here, it's just an unfortunate fact. There's not enough shoulders to the wheel pushing. We have our active group folks and people paying taxes, but it's just not enough for this city. You have a 7 square mile city next to Palm Beach. And Mayor, you used some of these statistics in your State of the Union speech. 7 square miles, and it generates $5.3 million in property taxes. That's before we take out from the CRA. That's just, that's an unbelievable number. And it's indicative of the fact we don't have enough properties actively engaged in what's happening with the city. So part of the business model, as we've talked, is how do we engage those properties? How do we fill them back up with useful activities? How do we bring families and homes and businesses that are all broadening this tax base so that we are stable? And one of the key things you can do as you fulfill your fundamental responsibility to build infrastructure is understand that when you build infrastructure, and it's good, it's got value, you're automatically adding value to the properties that it serves. Whether it's a vacant property on a dirt road, and I have to say, Mayor, back when I was sat through the April workshop a year ago, and you did the video, and you demonstrated that there's whole parts of this city that didn't even have infrastructure. And I remember Commissioner Maxwell saying, I'm so glad to hear that there's somebody else talking about this need. It's important, but it'll also help us bring all these properties into play. So it's our fundamental responsibility, and it's a strategic investment to increase the value of the city so that it can become stable. And those are two things I don't want y'all to forget as we go through this process. Now, what staff's going to start to talk about here is not a fixed point. This is a moving document, and even up until last night, we were making changes back and forth and talking about this. Our intent today is to carry you through this information, and I'd really like it if staff could take you through the different sections, you know, for a recap, showing you the base plan we originally talked about, and then taking you through district by district, the options, and then some of the upgrade options you may want to consider, such as the Park of Commerce and other, as he goes towards the end. You know, let's get all that out there, and then we'll have the finance section talked about, and then we can have a real good discussion. But again, I don't want you to think this is the plan, because it is not. We're going to have several more iterations. So with that opening, I want to introduce Jamie Brown, and I want to thank Jamie, Felipe Lupasso, where's Monica Morandi? She's here.
She's at her bridal shower.
She's at her bridal shower, and I don't know why she's there and not here. Carla White, Larry Johnson, who just came on, is guiding this, and of course Steve, and all the other staff members who's been working on this, along with everything else we're doing. This huge plan is also on our work list, so he's going to walk us through it, and then we'll get to the questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I am Jamie Brown, the city's Public Services Director. Now, what I wanted to start off with today, our initial presentation on this topic was back in April on the 16th. It's been over 4 months. A lot has happened since then. A lot of people present today might not have even seen that presentation. I want to do a quick recap so we kind of understand how we got to that point, and then moving forward from there, how we got to today. So I just want to get all the empirical data out there. At the end, we'll have the open workshop discussion and kind of talk about how everyone feels we're going to get our city on the right track and attract the businesses and families that the city manager is talking about. Quick cross-section of a typical city street, just so everyone knows what we're talking about. You have your water, your sewer, your storm. Every sidewalk we're doing from here on out will have electrical conduits put under it for the future undergrounding of our electric system, and then the roadway, obviously. Now, in the past, as we discussed before, there hasn't been a real good coordination between public services and utilities. Public services would go through to a road, utilities would come through the next year or the year after that, and trench it up and do their water main work. So you basically have a new roadway that has now been patched over, which made no sense at all. So the whole point in this plan is we have now coordinated everything. So from here on out, everything will be done coordinated, and we won't have situations like this anymore. Everything in this base plan that we went over back in April was based off of 1 through 5. These are the priorities that we set as far as getting all these projects together. Number 1 was life safety, then proximity to our neighborhood schools, then the number of citizens that the project would actually affect, then the roadway condition based on a PCI rating, which we'll get into, that's pavement condition index, and then the environmental safety and public health, which is our sewer. The 3 major portions and plans that went into this overall base master plan included the roadway master plan, which was done and started in 2012. Complete roadway and sidewalk study analysis. Every single street in the city was surveyed and given an actual PCI number, which is pavement condition index. 100 being a brand new road and 0 being an unpaved road. Beyond that, back in 2011, the city had a stormwater master plan done, and that addressed all of the current stormwater issues in the city, which we all know we have a lot, anytime we get a lot of rain, as well as covered flood control, aquifer recharge, water conservation, improved water quality, and harvesting. The third piece of this was the hydrant master plan, which is talking about the adequate fire protection, and we'll get into that also. This was developed in 2013, and a model was created basically showing our fire flow needs. This is a quick pie chart showing basically how the city is broken up. We do have 116 miles of paved roadways. 27 of those are unpaved roads now. This is the pavement condition index. 91 to 100. These are basically roads we're saying are in great condition and need no maintenance at the time being. 83 through 90 was good condition, just localized repairs. 71 to 82, fair condition. 56 to 70 is when we really get into our milling and overlay. And then 55 is, that's the important. That 55 number is what everything is based on here. That means that if a road is 55 or under, it is a complete reconstruction. Everything in this base plan that we went over in April is based on 55 and below. Meaning that everything's coming up, so we're going to address all of the underground utilities as part of this project while we're doing this. And we'll get back to that in a little while. This was just an overall map, color-coded, showing the condition of every roadway in the city. Beyond that, the proposed water mains. The blue circles that you guys see on your plans, the center of those circles is actually a fire hydrant with a 300-foot radius around it. Now, everywhere up here that is overlapping, you have solid blue, that means we have sufficient coverage in those areas. The gaps that you see, all these little gaps, that actually means that we do not have sufficient coverage and there are hydrants currently in there. What this base plan was going to do was install 15 miles of water main, 136 new hydrants, and this is affecting basically 2,720 properties. So it's a very large increase. Now, current projects. These are projects that we currently have in our capital improvement program and are not part of this base plan. But we're showing these because they're going to be done. They just will not be financially included in this base plan. Lake Worth 2020. This is what we are now referring to this plan as. No longer this roadway and utility master plan, the wrong, as you like to call it. We've kind of done away with that name.
Good choice.
Why? All right, now the base plan, as I mentioned, was a combination of the stormwater, the water hydrant, the sewer, and the master plan. This was the 55 and below again. That's all we were doing with the base plan, which was back in April. And again, that's the key number there. And on average, your roadways are going to decrease around 3 points per year. So for example, if you had a road that was rated an 84 today, next year it's going to be rated at 3. The year after that, 78, and that's kind of how you judge your condition. This is the overall city laid with years 1 through 5 of that base plan, at 55 and below, color-coded per year. And I do want to say that each project we did in here, these were really detailed out. We did a takeoff for every single project. I think it's important for people to know we didn't just kind of look at a road and say, we'll throw $300,000 at that. That's about what it looks like. You know, if the mayor, for instance, said, I see in year 4, you're doing 8th Street from 2nd Avenue North to 5th Avenue North. How much water main does that involve? I could look at you and say, 1,345 linear foot of water main at $51 per linear foot, and that includes not only the pipe material, but the labor to put it in, and it's going to be a total of $68,595. So that's the kind of detail that we put into this. So I think that's very important to know. Every single project that you see up here has that level of detail. We can pull everything at any point in time. So this is the cost summary for that base plan, years 1 through 5. Broken down into roadway, stormwater, water main, sewer, and then you see your totals in the far column for that total amount of $69.4 million. The question following this, when we did this in April, was what happens if now instead of just at 55, we look into 56 to 65? If we have a second option, how much would that cost? What would that look like? How many more roads would that actually include? And then beyond that, taking it to a third tier, what if we took that 66 to 75? How much more money are we looking at above that? How many more roads would that actually take care of? What does that look like? That's what we've done here. The base plan, 55 and below. Option 2, pavement condition actually 65 and below. And option 3 is the pavement condition index of 75 and below. So that's what we're kind of going to move into here. So you can kind of see what you're looking at as you're adding on, and then we'll get into enhancements, everything else beyond that. Now, District 1, broken down into years 1 through 5. Current projects, I mentioned that before, we are showing the current projects that are being funded, right, that are already funded in the CIP, so that's shown in there. And the hatched area is the CDBG area, the Community Development Block Grant area. Now, these are all being done. Conversely, these are the roads that are not covered in that base plan, that would not be addressed in that base plan. Yes, sir?
Just ballpark on those two images, flipping back and forth, is that about 50-50?
No, it is not, and I don't actually know the exact percentage that it is.
Is it a long way off of 50-50, just eyeballing it when you include all the different colors?
It's not a long way off, no.
So for 69 million in District 1, that covers about 50% of the roads.
We could do the,
Ballpark.
give an exact percentage.
I don't.
Something we can look at. I can easily get that for
I
you.
don't need exact, I just need, and the public needs a ballpark sort of sense. That, you know, I've got a 50, if I live on a road in District 1, I've got about a 50% chance of.
Now, we didn't break it down by district. Now, overall, districts 1 through 4, this base plan would do about 48% of the city.
So not far off. It's 50.
You're not far off, but now keep in mind, that is broken down by, now that's the entire city as a whole, not broken down by districts.
Right.
So districts share projects, and they kind of, they're not just district specific. So I can't say that 50% of each district will be
Sure.
done,
No, I
but
understand.
50% of the entire. Yes, sir.
Commissioner Zergan?
Are we gonna just let Jamie proceed through
Yeah,
everything?
I'll just go through everything and then.
I-
I'm very sorry, but my job is to make sure that if we go into spending a lot of money, that we understand clearly what we're getting. And if I need to ask questions along the way, I'll ask questions along the way.
I studied this very much, Mayor, and I made a lot of notes, and I'm prepared to listen to the whole thing and then get into the questions after. So it has fluidity of what this thing was designed to do, is to present this as a package.
I think
Sorry.
that, first of all, we introduced the song, we laid it out, and I'm sorry you couldn't be here for that, but we'd like to get through the presentation if we could, and then ask, the whole point of this is a workshop, so we're gonna be talking about everything the whole day. So we'll have a million chances to ask a million questions, if that would be okay. I prefer that, actually.
Okay, I understand that you would prefer it, and I'm perfectly fine with you asking your questions at the end. I would prefer to ask questions as they come along so that I make sure I'm understanding. Otherwise, I get a whole block of information, and I need to get the key pieces.
So then I'll look for consensus for asking questions during it, city commissioner, or asking questions after the end of the presentation?
After.
After.
Thank you.
Thank you. Continue, Mr. Brown.
Okay, this base plan, 55 and below, this includes 27 projects in District 1 alone. And if everyone flips to the back, there's an appendix in the back that actually has a breakdown per district of exactly what these projects are. So it goes through and actually lists every single project and what's going to be covered now. Or that was not covered. If we look at that second tier, that option 2 that we mentioned, up to 65, this is actually what it looks like if all those projects are done. And conversely, that's what's left over. So as we're moving up, you can see we're getting less and less on this final slide here that we're showing is not covered. And this is up to 75. And also, I wanted to mention, in the CDBG area, you know, we're getting about roughly 200,000 a year in block grants. Obviously, what we get will go toward projects and stuff we are doing in the CDBG area. So that would just increase the money that we would be needing to use. We would actually put that towards projects. So, you know, there's just not an exact amount we get each year. And so everyone knows that that area is from A Street to Dixie Highway and from our border at Lantana up to Fifth Avenue North. That constitutes our CDBG area. And these are the roads not covered in that third tier, that 75 and below. On to District 2, this is years 1 through 5, color-coded. Park and Commerce over to the left, which we'll get into in a little while. and then this is the top portion of the CDBG area. These are the roads not included in that 55 and below. We go up to 65, I feel a little bit more done. Roads not covered. And then this is 75. And you can see a very large portion of District 2 is going to be addressed if we go up to 75 here. And that's what we have left over. District 3, same. Here's 1 through 5. The roads that are not covered under this base plan, 55 and below. This is up to 65, all the projects that are added. And the roads not covered from 65 and below. And then finally, the PCI 75, and the roads that are not covered 75. And then finally, on District 4, and so we can get into detail when we go into the discussion portion as far as what's included and what that means, what's not. District 4 is $12 projects total for the base plan. Roads not covered in District 4 under that base plan, up to 65, the products that are added. What's not covered, and then 75, that would be everything that would be done in District 4. If we go up to 75, and the roads that would not be done in District 4. Now, is William Waters here? I would like to, William Waters is the city's director of community sustainability. He's been working a lot on the Park of Commerce piece. We actually just had an award last Monday to an engineering firm for the engineering services and also the owner's rep for the Park of Commerce, and he's going to get into depth as far as what this all means. So, Mr. Waters. By the way, I feel terribly overdressed today.
You got a pink tie on it, all right.
Yeah, I like the pink tie, Jim.
That's a wooden shirt.
Thanks, Jamie. As many of you know, the Park of Commerce has been discussed since the late 1990s with an evaluation of the potential of the Park of Commerce through a study done by Treasure Coast Regional Planning Commission. There was a secondary study done in 2001. In 2010, a infrastructure assessment was done by CDM, which gave us some idea of the deficiencies when it came to stormwater, water, electric, telecommunications, sewer, as well as landscaping and lighting. The image you see up here is actually from the CDM report, which gave a phased approach to how to get the Park of Commerce to the minimum level of appropriate infrastructure in order to encourage development. The yellow area is phase 1. In reference to what Jamie was mentioning about the RFPs that were finished last week to select, or at least shortlist, an owner's rep and then also a design firm, that would be the area that they would be focusing on. There was a presentation to the City Commission about a year and a half ago where CDM and their consultants came and gave an update to the City Commission on their design approach and their assumptions that generated the analysis. I must say that though they did the best they could with the documentation they were given, there was very little input coming back to them from the city. So they gave us a report that was the minimal requirements for the infrastructure that had 2 pages of exclusions. Those exclusions entailed permitting, design fees, right-of-way acquisition, a number of things that actually generated a cost much greater than their original estimate of $11 million. We reviewed this and updated it over the past 2 years, and now have a comprehensive estimate of about $18 million to cover the whole thing. Once this came back sort of in the picture with the city, we were in the process of doing the land development regulations, which now have been put in place. And the land development regulations, as they were adopted on the 6th, generate the potential of about 1.5 million more square feet in the Park of Commerce than what was allowed under the old code. So the assumptions that CDM had to provide the basic minimum infrastructure were geared toward the old code versus the new code. And where there are significant areas of additional intensity and density along 2nd Avenue with the mixed-use district and the mixed-use district that was proposed along 10th Avenue on this side, which is also included in Park of Commerce. The area is governed by a traffic concurrency exemption area, which covers about 1 million square feet, most of which is actually industrial, manufacturing, warehouse type use. There's about 100,000 of commercial and a little bit of retail. So, when we were looking at the LDRs and moving them forward, we did another analysis of the traffic impact with Pender-Troutman. And we came up with an approach to sort of reevaluate CDM's approach and thinking that maybe the phase one would be an initial phase, and then as development comes along, there's likely a potential benefit to the area from a traffic concurrency standpoint, as well as a feasibility and development potential to have another north-south corridor somewhere in this area where the city owns quite a bit of property and provide a connection closer to I-95. 10th Avenue is considered a constrained roadway. It has a CRAWS designation, which stands for constrained roadway with lower levels of service. I know we have too many acronyms. And that road is, if you're there during rush hour in the morning and rush hour in the evening, it is heavily constrained. So we need to have ways to get people in and out of the Park Commerce closer to 95, and then also trigger people trying to get them on Lakewood Road to go to the Turnpike. That's what's envisioned with this group that's come in to do the design work and the project management for us, including coming up with the best scenario for doing land acquisition. There is not a whole lot of land acquisition required. The current right-of-way is about 50 feet. They are proposing, as well as the county, we should have likely 80 feet, and there aren't that many property owners involved. We've also, in the rezoning, hopefully somewhere down the road, the trailer parks will become more advantageous for industrial use than residential, because there are limitations on what types of industrial uses can happen there when they're adjacent to or across the street from residential, and it's kind of an inherent conflict. I think that's about it when it comes to Park Commerce. We can phase it. I think in the overall master plan, we had geared it toward a 5-year approach. Originally, under CDM, it was about a 12-year approach, about 3 years per phase. Depending on development interest and monies coming from the county, because the Belt Railroad is a county road, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization does have it on a longer range scale to improve. And depending on how many grants we can get from, say, the Economic Development Administration, we can possibly do more than one phase at a time. But keep in mind that we can't do too much of it at one time, otherwise the park itself and the residents who are there and the tenants will have an inability to get in and out of the park. So we're trying to take everything into consideration and be respectful of people who are already there, encourage those who want to come, and not limit them to be able to invest early if they are ahead of our schedule for doing infrastructure improvements.
Mr. Brown? Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Lou. Just don't want to address it. Oh, gosh. All right. Enhancements. Now, everything we've talked about up to this point is only involved with the underground utilities, the water, sewer, storm, the roadways, which just include the actual asphalt, the curbing, and the sidewalk. Nothing built into those previous numbers had any of these enhancements, such as traffic calming, street lights, hardscapes. As you can see, we've actually broken down the price under each one of these. So per block, this is about what we're looking at.